Hello and welcome again to the Amplify, Connect, and Expand extended fireside chat conversation with Mo Osinubi. My name is Joy Thompson. I serve as the Director of Programs here at Youth Collaboratory, and I'm thrilled to be joined again by Mo. If you missed our teaser conversation, I want to be sure you know who this amazing person is. Her name is Mayowa Mo Osinubi. She's a multifaceted activist, artist, entrepreneur, and serving as the founder and CEO of Mics for the Missing, an organization that is committed to raising awareness and advocating for missing Black and Indigenous people of color. She is also the principal owner of Social Glue Media, a digital media and marketing company that explores the dynamic intersections of communication, arts, and education. Her research and endeavors center on justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. Welcome back, Mo, and thank you so much for being here with us. And let's just right into it. Let's get into it.
Yeah.
So yeah, we left the conversation off just talking about examples where cultural practices have served as protective factors in your community or field of work. What more would you like to share about the things that you've witnessed or been a part of or seen?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I can go from my experiences is that when we think about culture as practices, cultural practices as protective factors, in many cultures, cultural practices are rooted in identity and heritage, and that really does serve as a protective factor. So we were saying, what are we protecting ourselves from? We're protecting ourselves from a lot of trauma, and this trauma is interpersonal, but it's also systemic. And so for me and my community and so many of my friends' art and going back into the traditions of spiritual music and storytelling and oral traditions, that has really helped us heal. That has been a part of our healing. And so when we talk about growth, we always talk about growth. Healing is a part of growth. And so we're not often responsible for the trauma that we endure, but we are responsible for that healing. And so I'm really, really a big proponent in getting back to our history, right? Getting back to our history. And that's why I'm also a big proponent in endorsing and fighting to protect our history because there are active initiatives being placed today in this world to hide our history, right? And so, one of my favorite quotes is from Audre Lorde. We love this ancestor who has given us so much knowledge, and I would like to quote her: "Is we do not have to romanticize our past in order to be aware of how it seeds our present. We do not have to suffer the waste of amnesia that robs us of the lessons of the past, rather than permit us to read them with pride as well as a deep understanding. We know what it is to be lied to, and we know how important it is not to lie to ourselves. We are powerful because we have survived, and that is what this is all about: survival and growth." Once again, right? Like, can we snap for that? Like, it's all about survival and growth is healing. Is a part of healing is growth. And so, yeah, that sums it all up. Ancestors said it best. It's like getting back to our history, getting back to our traditions, and we have such a rich culture. And that communal connection and doing this work communally is also a big part of our healing as well.
Absolutely. What you're bringing up for me is Sankofa.
Yes.
Like and we see it everywhere. If you've seen African print clothing, you've seen the symbol of Sankofa. Some people may not know what it is, but I grew up with a mom who was a batik artist,
Mm.
and it's really a resistance art with wax and dyes and such. And so I saw these symbols before I knew what they meant. And then when I knew what they meant, it was cute, then I saw like Janet Jackson had a Sankofa tattoo. And as a young person, I was like, oh, that's cool. I know what that is. But the older I get, the deeper the meaning means to me. The more I'm learning from our ancestors, from my expertise and experiences, is what can I take from what has happened, and where can that guide me? And so also when I think about like culture as a protective factor, I'm also thinking about, and I mentioned this in the other conversation, is that these cultural practices that we have, that Indigenous people have all around the globe, are practices of sustainability as well, right? It's not just for us, it's not just for fun, but it's also for like when we talk about the planet. something that's really sitting with me right now is like fast fashion.
Yes,
And
yes.
so when I'm thinking about culture as a protective factor, and then I'm remembering this batik art, and I'm thinking of the wax fabric, and I'm thinking about all the ways that we reduce, reuse, and have been doing that forever.
Right.
My grandmother growing tomatoes and me sitting on her front porch and eating those tomatoes. Like now everybody's talking about farm to table, and I'm trying to say, hey, we've been farm to
You've
table
been farm to table from the beginning, right?
from the beginning. So yes, and then the what you brought up around doing it in community. I know for both of us, music is a huge part of for like our lives, our work life, all the things. And the call and response of choir for me as a young person was really healing. Like there was a lot going on in middle school for anybody, right? Like just that kind of age.
Transition, yeah, that adjustment. Oh, yes.
Yeah. So I was grateful to have like the opportunity of going through a rites of passage program. So I was really blessed in that way. And also like just the angst of being a young person. There was nothing like being in choir and learning those songs and doing it in community that made me feel connected, especially as an only child whose roots are Southern and on the East Coast, and being like raised on the West Coast, I felt connected in that way and protected in ways that many people don't think about. So music as a cultural and protective factor is a huge thing for me too.
Right. Many people don't think about it. And I think what you just described was like this is a practice that serves as like this is communal spaces, like your churches, your neighborhood centers. Like these are communal spaces that are vital to our healing and to our growth as a people. So when we talk about culture as a protective factor, we have to think of the continuity of it, right? Like you said, the sustainability. So when we do these practices, when we honor our ancestors, when we go back to the basics, right? Like you said, farm to tables is was from the beginning. When we go back to those traditions, what we really do is we help maintain that cultural continuity and that cultural sustainability that has always gotten us through the toughest of times. Because there's always been tough times, and there will be tough times, but we are so resilient and we're so brilliant as a people and as a culture. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. One more thing, and then I'll leave it. But one of the things that came up in the larger conversation from Alexandria was about dance, and I was thinking about that too because as a young girl, I was really amazed by watching and observing the men do the African boot dance. But I
Mhm.
had a mentor, Baba Achebe Hoskins from here in Oakland, and he taught me how to do the African boot dance, and he taught me the song to go along with it. And so for me, that was really healing and welcoming to like be surrounded by my brothers, be surrounded by like an intergenerational, multi-gen, like everybody was there and like so that is something to this day when somebody breaks out in Chosalosa and they start doing that dance, like I am right there with them. And yeah, I will teach that to all the young people that I'm in community with. And to me, that, that will continue to move on and we carry that forward. So that is exciting to me too.
So powerful, and I wanted to say as you're speaking it, I could just see the light just like light you up. You just got brighter just talking about it, and
Yeah.
that's so powerful. And that's why we have to think about our history, going back to history. The
Yeah.
first stolen Africans who were brought to this country, they were banned from coming together and dancing and playing drums, and this was what was usual practice in Africa. And we know why. We know why that power that just lit you up, because that power of music and oneness and community, when we come together, we really are unbreakable.
Mhm.
And yeah, I'm so glad that you shared that. Dance
Yeah.
is so important too. Yes.
Yeah. Sankofa. I feel like that's the answer to the first question
Yes.
in all the ways.
Yes.
So this next question is, how can allies, advocates, and people who do not identify as being Black center culture in their community and workspaces?
Yes. So when I think of allies and advocates that do not identify as being Black, how they can center Black culture is by educating themselves. Like that's the number one for me. Educate themselves going back to history, on our history, our struggles, our strains, our community and how we support each other, because we all are unique and there's a lot of nuances, and that hunger and curiosity is actually really important, and it's vital to being a true ally. So that includes learning about our culture and our trauma, right? Whether it's intergenerational or whatever, having that knowledge and having that curiosity to understand us better, because you can't love me, you can't support me if you don't understand me,
Yeah,
right? And so we are such a resilient people, and so we have to kind of we have to make sure that the allies that are around us are doing that work, and that work is active. You know, one practice that like I always recommend for non, you know, for non-black folks is to, you know, decenter themselves, because the world centers whiteness, you know, that's the world we live in. And so to decenter themselves in spaces that they can really allow Black people to have a voice, to lead conversations, to be decision makers in the process, right? Don't speak for us. That's where you can really get to be transformative and not performative, right? Because we're all on a stage. The world is a stage. So when people say, you know, this is performative, you know, the DEI word, right? It's like the bad word. Don't say performative. But the truth is, we're all on a stage. But my whole thing is, you can take anything and make it transformative with the intention and how you practice it. So, you know, allies must decenter themselves, because what can happen, and I've seen this in a lot of spaces doing DEI work, is allies can get, there's pitfalls, and they can fall into like co-opting cultural narratives, for example, instead of uplifting the voices of the marginalized groups that they're supposed to be serving, right? We see that happening all the time. So just engaging in Black-led initiatives, supporting Black-owned businesses, decentering yourself, promoting policies that really center equity, and, you know, that's low hanging practical ways to be an ally and to really center culture.
I love that. And then one of the things that I really appreciate that you said is learn about our culture and about our trauma. I think one of the things that one of the pitfalls is conflating the two, and people assuming that my Blackness is trauma, when actually my Blackness is a protective factor, is beautiful, is something that I take a lot of pride in. And so being placed at highest risk for a lot of these things that we're doing prevention work for is not because of my Blackness, it's because of how I'm treated because of my Blackness. And so I really appreciate you differentiating the two. And while it may be considered low-hanging fruits, often the simplest thing is not necessarily the easiest thing. And so that like being in authentic relationship is like absolutely support Black businesses and talk to people. Like if you are in service provision and you are not a person of color, I challenge you to be in relationship that is not a service relationship to BIPOC community members. Like that is one of the things that comes up a lot in the mentoring work that I do, of people saying, we need more Black mentors, and specifically, we need more Black male mentors. I'm like, well, which Black men are you connected to, and how do they feel when they come to your space? Which Black women are you connected to, and how do they feel? Are they welcomed when they come to your space? And so it really is an everyday practice
Yep.
of pushing against the things that we have our patterns, the things that we were taught, all of us, you know. And there's more to say there, but specifically for this question, I think one of the pitfalls also that I witness is people kind of shutting down, of saying, okay, I'm in this BIPOC space, I'm around all these Black people, I'm not going to say anything, or I'm going the other side. um, Either one of those, and to just be um, an authentic relationship.
I think that's so important, like you said, that interpersonal, right? Because even the oppression and the trauma that we face is on different levels, right? We got the interpersonal, we've got the institutional, we've got the systemic. And so it has to happen on all those levels when we talk about the actuals. healing and the actual cultural protection and the safe spaces and centering our culture, it has to be an active, like you said, it's active. This isn't something that is a one and done. This is something that is just continual because the world is continually moving. The only
Yeah.
thing it is change. And so that's something that we have to continually examine ourselves. And I love spaces that are continually examining themselves because a part of this work is accountability. We love to talk about community, but you can't have community without accountability. And so without that accountability, you can't have proper conflict resolution, right? Like that's another thing. We got to talk about conflict resolution. There has to be, I always say, if you're in a space where you can't speak up without retaliation, that's not a safe space. If you can't be yourself without there being some type of blowback or drawback, that's not a safe space. And so, centering culture and allyship and advocacy, it has to be more than just, like you said, it has to be more than just the obvious steps. It has to be that those relationships, it has to be really making sure that you're setting the example.
Hmm. Yeah. What's coming to mind to me is as you talk about like learning and continuing to evolve and grow is the cultural competence versus cultural humility conversation.
Yes.
Where it's like we're getting to the tipping point. Like we were at a certain point as a global community when cultural competence came up of like we need to address something. But then we got to the point again where it's always this continuum, right? Where people are like, oh, I know about those people. This is how I dealt with this last case or this last situation. And, that's how I'll deal with all of them because now I know who they are and what they are. And so this practice of being in curiosity in a respectful way, I think is going to take us a long way, especially in this next season, whatever these next 4 years bring. And it's something that I challenge us as a BIPOC community to participate in too. It's like, what are the ways that I can be curious about this family or the situation? Where how can I be in practice and really aligned with the outcome that I'm interested in this moment? And it really is, to your point, an everyday effort.
Hey.
Yeah. All right, so this next question I have for us is, can you speak to the importance of having spaces that allow for Black women and girls to show up as their full selves?
I can't talk about this enough. So having spaces where Black women and girls can show up for themselves is vital, vital for fostering healing, growth, and empowerment. And that's what we need in a world that's continually laying on us, right? So we just came out of a pandemic, 4 years, right? 4 years of a lot of transition and change. And so the research, when we talk about the research under like intersectional feminism and how it highlights Black women, we face unique challenges. We really do because we have the racism, we have the sexism, and because we face those unique challenges, a lot of the wounds that we have are hidden from ourselves. We don't even know that we have these wounds, right? We don't even know that we have this burden that we're carrying around. And so we need spaces that can really help cultivate community healing and foster leadership. And so these spaces, they have to be almost like a refuge for us, and it has to be a place that we can be free from the microaggressions that we have to face, all the systemic inequities that we have to face as Black women and girls. We need that space and to express themselves. We need to express ourselves freely and reflect on our lived experiences without judgment. So judgment is a really, really big important place. And um I always think it's funny that Planet Fitness says judgment free zone, but shouldn't the world just be a judgment free zone? Like, like it shouldn't just like that's a good slogan and tagline, but we really need that judgment free zone because what I feel like happens, and this happened to me as a Black woman that was growing into her womanhood, is really understanding that what I'm really struggling with, right? Struggling with my own healing and understanding how to name a thing and what is really up, what am I really dealing with? I just had a microaggression. I just had a racist encounter. What does this really mean to me? And so we need more spaces that we could have those conversations and that could really foster emotional well-being because we're taking a lot of trauma in, and so we need those places that we can heal ourselves. And so I say that the spaces start with you. Like we set the vibe, we set that wherever we go, we can be advocates for those types of spaces. We can connect with other people, other Black women and girls in our areas and our lives, and create those spaces. I've been a part of a lot of community spaces that were intended for our healing as Black women and girls, from book clubs. I joined a book club during the pandemic. I've been to so many different events. I've even started like group chats. Like, we're living a digital world. Like, a group chat could be a protective place, right? For us to just be able to be ourselves, to express ourselves freely, and talk about, almost like a support group. I got like four different chats that I'm in, and I love each and every one of them. And so, my advice too to any Black women and girls is create those spaces to create, be the change you want to see. So create those spaces too. And it could be as simple as just picking up your phone and start in a group in a space where you can do that. And so yeah, that it's vital. It's just so vital to our healing and to our balance, because we're the bottom ranks. We're carrying it all. It all boils down to Black women and girls. We're carrying a lot of weight, and we need spaces where we can let that all go.
Yeah, absolutely. I describe belonging as is different from like I'll just say I describe belonging as not only did I get an invitation to the party, but like there's music at the party I want to dance to. So I'm gonna dance and then I'm gonna meet friends because people are gonna want to dance with me. Like that's different from just like, oh, you got invited to the party.
Yeah.
And so when I'm at that party and I am dancing, if there is something that I'm experiencing, I'm likely to talk to somebody at that party about what I'm experiencing. And this is important to me because of the work that we're doing around prevention in terms of violence against Black women and girls and exploitation and human trafficking. So when I think about programs that are trying to do this prevention work, having those non-judgmental spaces for young girls is so vital because you can have all the services and it be empty because people feel judged or not cared for in those spaces. But the programs that we've worked with that have really made huge impact and there's the evidence-based practice of what people say works for programs, and then there's the emerging best practice and the cultural practices, and that actually work. And I always say that youth vote with their participation; they vote with their feet, so they
Mm.
show up to these programs. And some of these programs don't have CSEC, like commercial sexual exploitation, in their title. They don't have trafficking. They don't name it, but what they do is they create spaces for these Black girls to show up and feel comfortable. And they figure out through observation and authentic relationship what their needs are. So they'll connect them to the programming without the programming being centered, but the girl being centered or the person being centered. And that's what I think is so important about these spaces. And even if the space is not all BIPOC, centering that and figuring out what makes it, because young people have their own culture, right? They have their own music, their fashion, dance. I mean, I can't keep up with all the movements. I just want to do my 90s, 80s things.
Can't do all the challenges. No, not all the challenges.
I'm not good for a TikTok challenge at all, but I am, tickled by it and love to see them do it. But it's more likely that you'll find out that there's a boyfriend that's 25 when this young person is 16, if they can do that TikTok challenge in your office, rather than, be so serious and show up at this time and dress this way. Like, can we just be with them where they are so that we can listen through the behaviors and begin to understand? because these young people aren't going to come to you and say, I was kidnapped last night. They're going to say, I'm hungry, or whatever is on their heart in that moment. How can we like truly see them? And obviously, even at my big age, I'm not going to go somewhere where I'm feeling judged, and voluntarily share my hardship. So
Yeah.
that's important to me.
Also, too, what you said, thank you for sharing that, was so beautiful. Made me think that like liberation, because we always talk about liberation as almost like a destination, but
Mm,
liberation's also a feeling. And you can create that feeling in a moment in time for an hour a day, depending on how you intentionally set that space that you're creating, right? Because I mean, it's so, the oppression that we face is just so interpersonal. It's such an interpersonal violence, and it could really scar us, and scar us at a very young age, at a very, very young age. So I think it's very important to create those spaces, but also too, it just made me think that you could bring that liberation in the setting and the environment and the space that you create.
absolutely, at every step. And it's one of the things that we're getting to. I think when I first started in anti-trafficking work, the first thing that you see is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like when someone doesn't have the shelter or the food, this they're less likely going to do this and that. But actually, one of the things that when I met Lenora, we met in 2017, and she was like, nonsense. There's liberation at the bottom level. At every moment, there's an opportunity. Like we Africans have been, knowing this for a long time. We've been braiding patterns of freedom literally into our hair. Liberation is everywhere. So thank you for saying that.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I think that we almost have a call to action. That is like I love this question because it almost ends on a call to action that we can make sure to intentionally create spaces that are safe for Black women and girls to show up as their full selves, to be able to speak their truth, and to be able to continue to prioritize their own healing.
Yes. I mean, I knew there was going to be a mic drop. You have one at the beginning and another one here now near towards the end. So I don't have much to add, but is there anything else that you would want to add to this conversation?
But yes, I did share this earlier in our and at our ACE conference, but I do want to end with this because I feel like this poem is just great. It's from a book by Renee Watson called Black Girl You Are Atlas, and I have to shout out Akua Holmes who did all the artwork in this book, so it's also very beautiful. Please pick it up, support Black women, authors, and illustrators. So this poem is just perfect for everything that the Youth Collaboratory has been doing. And I'm just going to end on this note. A Black girl gives thanks for the aunties by blood and by choice who knew how to give warning by looking or clearing their throat or sitting forward just enough to get the point across. For every peppermint candy and Weathers original smuggled from hand to hand on Sunday mornings, for hands clapping games and hula hoops and roller skates and brown baby dolls and brown angels on top of your Christmas tree, for all the gossip swirling around, two young ears at the family gathering, for prayers and warnings, for the advice asked for and the advice given away, for pressing hot combs and royal crown hair grease, for hands and braids and twists thick, for the way girl is a song, is a confirmation, is a chastisement, is prayer, for cornbread and honey butter, and always a crock pot holding home, for freedom fighters and protest poets, for every tale passed down that tells the story that we survived, how we survived. Oh, give thanks. Oh, give thanks.
Yes, 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 1,000 times. Yes. Thank you, Mo. It has been a pleasure to be in community and conversation with you again. I hope that there are more opportunities for us to do it. You dropped some gems. I feel like I need to sit with them and then create like a summary of what they were.
It's
But thank you for today.
thank you. And everybody prioritize and support and love Black women and girls.
Absolutely. And we'll share, in addition with the follow-up from this video, how to stay in touch with Mo and also that book so that you can pick it up and support Black businesses. Perfect.